Imagine waking in the middle of a summer night. The room is dark, the windows are open, but the air outside is almost as warm as the air inside. There's no machine humming in the corner, no cold air coming from a vent, no thermostat waiting for you to choose a comfortable temperature. You turn the pillow over, searching for the cooler side, but there is no cooler side. For most of human history, this was simply life. Heat was not something you could switch off. You could escape it. You could hide from it. You could learn to live with it. But you could not control it. And that small difference shaped the way human beings built their homes, their cities, and even their daily routines. In hot climates, people learned to work with nature rather than fight against it. Buildings were designed around shade. Walls were often thick, slowing the movement of heat. Windows could be positioned to catch whatever breeze was available. Courtyards created pockets of shade. Some homes were built partly underground, where the earth could provide a more stable temperature. And water became one of the oldest tools against heat. A wet surface could cool the surrounding air as water evaporated. A fountain could bring movement into an otherwise still courtyard. A damp cloth against the skin could provide a moment of relief. And then there were fans. Long before electricity, people used hand fans made from cloth, feathers, paper, leaves, or other material. They did not actually make the room colder. They moved air across the skin, and sometimes that was enough. But there was another problem, one that was harder to see: humidity. Heat and humidity together could turn an ordinary room into something oppressive. When the air already contained large amounts of moisture, sweat could not evaporate from the skin as easily. And when sweat cannot evaporate, the body loses one of its most important natural ways of cooling itself. So the ancient struggle with heat was never simply about temperature. It was about the air itself. And humans had very little control over it. For centuries, people adapted their lives around these limitations. In some places, activity moved toward the cooler hours of the morning and evening. In others, buildings became shelters from the sun. Markets, homes, religious buildings, and public spaces were designed with climate in mind. The architecture itself became a kind of survival technology. But eventually, the world began to change. Factories grew larger, cities became denser, machines began running for longer hours. People started working inside enormous industrial buildings, where thousands of bodies, machines, lamps, and processes could generate heat. And now the problem was no longer simply, how do we stay comfortable? It became something much more serious. What happens when heat begins to interfere with the work itself? Because some industries depended on controlling the air. Printing was one of them. Paper could absorb moisture. Ink could behave differently depending on the conditions around it. Materials could expand or contract. Machines could become difficult to operate. A factory could be filled with expensive equipment. And yet the invisible atmosphere surrounding that equipment could determine whether the entire process worked properly. Textile production faced similar problems. Fibers behaved differently depending on humidity. Too much dryness could create static electricity and make certain materials harder to handle. Too much moisture could create other difficulties. The strange thing was that the problem could not easily be seen. You could see a broken machine. You could see damaged paper. You could see a production line slowing down. But you could not simply point at the humidity in the room and say, "There." The enemy was invisible, and this invisible problem was becoming increasingly important in the industrial world. By the beginning of the 20th century, engineers were learning to control more and more of nature. They could generate electricity. They could move enormous machines. They could build taller structures. They could send messages across oceans. But inside a factory, the weather still had the final word. Then, in Brooklyn, New York, a young engineer was given a problem. It sounded simple, but solving it would change the modern world. The problem was not that the workers were too hot. It was not that the factory owners wanted luxury. And it was not about creating the comfortable indoor climate we now take for granted. The problem was paper. More precisely, the problem was what the air was doing to paper. At the Sackett-Wilhelms Lithographing and Publishing Company, changing humidity was affecting the printing process. The paper was not behaving consistently. And when paper does not behave consistently, precision printing becomes difficult. The company needed something unusual. They needed to control the atmosphere, not approximately, not by opening a window, not by waiting for the weather to change. They needed a machine that could make the air inside the building behave differently from the air outside. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the man who would solve the problem was not trying to invent the modern air conditioner. He was trying to control humidity. His name was Willis Carrier. And in 1902, he began working on an idea that would eventually allow humans to do something they had never truly been able to do before. Create a climate. Indoors. The first machine was not designed for bedrooms. It was not designed for summer vacations. It was not designed for movie theaters, shopping malls, cars, or skyscrapers. It was designed for a factory, for paper, for ink, for a problem hidden inside the air. But once Carrier discovered that temperature and humidity could be controlled together, a much larger possibility appeared. If engineers could control the air in one room, why not an entire building? And if they could control a building, what would stop them from changing the way people lived? At the time, almost nobody could have imagined the answer. Because the machine Carrier was developing was not merely another industrial device. It was the beginning of a new relationship between human beings and the weather. For thousands of years, we had adapted ourselves to the climate. Soon, we would begin adapting the climate to ourselves. And the first step began with something almost invisible. Moisture in the air, a printing press, and a young engineer staring at a problem that nobody had solved before. He was about to discover that if you could control humidity, you were already very close to controlling the heat itself, and then everything changed. Brooklyn, 1902. Inside a printing plant, something as simple as paper was becoming a serious problem. The humidity changed. The paper expanded and contracted. Colors failed to line up perfectly. A machine could be working exactly as designed, and yet the final image could still come out wrong. The solution would come from a young engineer named Willis Carrier. But Carrier was not trying to make people comfortable. He wanted to control the air. His idea was surprisingly simple. Instead of fighting the humidity with open windows, fans, or guesswork, he would make the air pass over cold coils. As the warm, moist air touched those cold surfaces, water began to condense. moisture was removed. And as the air was cooled and dried, its conditions became predictable. For the first time, an engineer could deliberately change the temperature and humidity of indoor air. That was the breakthrough. Carrier's early system was enormous compared with the machines we know today. It used refrigeration equipment, fans, ducts, and coils. It was expensive. It was complicated. And it certainly wasn't something an ordinary family could install in a house. But it worked. The printing process became more stable, and Carrier began to understand the larger meaning of what he had created. The machine was not simply cooling air. It was controlling the indoor environment. That idea slowly spread. Factories discovered that controlled air could improve production. Textile companies used air conditioning to manage humidity. Other industries began looking for ways to control their own indoor climates. But there was still a major obstacle. People did not yet see air conditioning as something they needed. It was an industrial tool, something for factories, not bedrooms, something for machines, not people. Then another unexpected place began using it: movie theaters. In the early 20th century, theaters could become unbearably hot, especially when hundreds or thousands of people crowded into a single room. Air conditioning offered something new: cool air. And suddenly, comfort became part of the entertainment. People could sit inside for hours without being overwhelmed by summer heat. Theaters became cooler. Department stores followed, then offices, then trains, then automobiles, and eventually, homes. But the transformation did not happen overnight. Early systems were expensive, massive, and difficult to install. For decades, air conditioning remained a luxury or a specialized industrial technology. Yet every new installation proved something important. The weather outside did not necessarily have to determine what happened inside. A building could have its own climate. A room could remain cool while the streets outside burned beneath the summer sun. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, human beings were creating artificial seasons. Winter could exist inside summer. Coolness could exist in the middle of a heat wave. The outside world could be hot, while the inside remained calm. This changed far more than comfort. It changed architecture. It changed where people wanted to live. And eventually, it would help transform entire regions of the world. Because once air conditioning became affordable and widespread, the question was no longer, how do we survive the heat? It became, where can we live because we no longer have to? And that question would reshape the modern world. By the middle of the 20th century, air conditioning was no longer just a machine for factories. It was becoming part of everyday life. Offices became cooler. Department stores became more comfortable. Movie theaters could draw people in during the hottest months of the year. Trains and cars slowly became more pleasant places to travel. And eventually, air conditioning began entering ordinary homes. But its greatest impact may have happened far beyond the walls of individual buildings. In the United States, especially, air conditioning helped make extremely hot regions much easier to live in. Cities such as Phoenix, Las Vegas, Houston, and Miami could grow rapidly despite their harsh climates. People could work indoors, shop indoors, sleep indoors, build larger offices, hotels, hospitals, and homes. The architecture of the modern city began to change. Buildings no longer needed to depend entirely on natural ventilation. Windows became less important for cooling. Large glass buildings could be sealed from the outside world, and the city itself became increasingly disconnected from the weather. Outside, the summer could be brutal. Inside, the temperature remained almost unchanged. It was a remarkable transformation. For most of history, architecture had been shaped by climate. Now, technology could partially replace climate-conscious design. But there was a price. Air conditioning requires enormous amounts of energy. And as billions of people around the world gained access to cooling, electricity demand grew with it. The machine that protected us from extreme heat also became part of a much larger environmental problem. Modern air conditioning systems have become far more efficient than early machines, and refrigerants have changed significantly over time. But the basic tension remains. The hotter the world becomes, the more people need cooling. And the more cooling we use, the more energy we consume. So air conditioning has created an unusual cycle. We invented a technology to escape the heat. Now, in a warming world, we depend on that technology more than ever. And yet, despite all of this, there is something almost extraordinary about what happened. For thousands of years, humans accepted that the weather was beyond their control. Summer arrived. Winter arrived. Heat entered through the walls. Cold entered through the windows. People adapted. Then, within a few generations, we built machines capable of creating small, artificial climates. A room could become winter in the middle of July. A factory could maintain the same conditions day after day. A skyscraper could rise in a desert. A person could close a door, press a button, and change the air around them. Think about that for a moment. We did not conquer the weather. We did something stranger. We built another world inside the first one. A small world where the outside temperature no longer had complete control. And perhaps that is the real story of air conditioning. It was never simply about cold air. It was about control. Control over humidity. Control over temperature. Control over the spaces where we live and work. And eventually, control over where human civilization could comfortably exist. The invention began with a printing problem in Brooklyn, but its consequences reached far beyond paper and ink. It changed factories. It changed architecture. It changed cities. It changed the American South and Southwest. And it changed the expectations of billions of people. Today, most of us barely notice it. We walk into a building and expect it to feel comfortable. We enter a car and expect cool air. We go home and expect the temperature to be under our control. The machine hums quietly in the background. And because it is so ordinary, we rarely think about how strange it really is. Outside, the weather is doing whatever it wants. Inside, we have created our own. And perhaps that is the most remarkable part. Human beings spent thousands of years learning how to survive the climate. Then, in the space of a few generations, we learned how to change it, at least inside the walls we built. And once we learned that lesson, there was no going back.